Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your afternoon is off to a good start. Browns out in Berea, working, getting ready for the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Sunday. Rich Eisen from NFL Network, also the Rich Eisen Show, with a comparison that he's been kind of thinking about relative to Jameis Winston, Browns quarterback.
He's the new Ryan Fitzpatrick of the National Football League.
Yeah, you're kind of right.
Where it could be the most entertaining game and the greatest offensive performance you could see, and then a total, cutting interception.
Yep.
And then he comes right back and just throws a 90-yard touchdown pass on you. And then he's his authentic self and he's captivating. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick all over again.
Let's welcome in Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. And Jake, I get the whole national narrative. Jameis is entertaining. I'm not into that. When you look at him, though, there's big play and then there's turnovers. It's been that way for everybody except a small period of time where he was playing for Sean Payton with Drew Brees.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Jameis's ability, like you talked about before the show, he can do a lot of really strong things as a quarterback. The arm is very real. It's been that way since his high school, baseball and his elite quarterback 11 stuff that he did. I mean, it's always been very real, and you don't get selected first overall without all of those natural tools. And he had a great run at Florida State. Obviously, in his final year at Florida State, the turnover bug started to creep up in a pretty significant way. So that was a concern. And then it obviously manifested itself in Tampa in a way that wasn't conducive for them to give him a second contract. Now, obviously, Tom Brady amplified that decision at the time. But anytime you look at Jameis, you're going to see a guy who can make a lot of really wow throws, and he does. He will sit in the pocket, he will stare down the gun barrel, and make several really good, pinpoint accurate throws that work out really well for an offense. But what his detriment has consistently been is the mistakes, and his mistakes usually result in turnovers. His interception percentage is among the highest. It might be the single highest at 3.5%, I think, in the active NFL landscape. So the turnover bug has followed him. And what I have found interesting was he obviously had those 5 years in Tampa. He had the ridiculous season, his final year, where he threw for 35 touchdowns and threw for 30 interceptions, but he had a ridiculously high passing burden, over 600 pass attempts. And then that era ends after that fifth year, and he goes to New Orleans, and he has a stint over the course of 4 years as a backup for Drew, and then he doesn't really get the job and is kind of backing up Derek Carr, whatever. And he did have that run of 7 games to start, I believe. I don't know if it was the 21 season, where he had 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and it's like, okay, well, coming to Cleveland, it's like it's an interesting thing, Dave, because he hadn't started since the 2019 season, I believe. And it's like, okay, can he rewrite his career? Can he have a little bit of a Geno Smith sort of run here where he, Geno got less opportunity in New York than Jameis did in Tampa, but he took those years as a backup, came out of it, became a better quarterback, and in his early 30s is getting this run in Seattle that's been quite clearly productive. Now, it's not going that well this year, but the last 2 years have been good, right? Got a nice contract out of it. And with Jameis, the interest for me was he's lovable and the background stuff, and he's, got the quotes, and there's a lot there, but he hasn't had a chance to start for a prolonged period of time since the Tampa day. So I was pretty curious in seeing him at the end of the season to can he run it out here and show that 14-3 turnover ratio, touchdowns to interceptions in 2021? Was that real? Has he kind of lost that? And there have been moments where he's been really good. We can agree. I mean, the burden has been heavy. He's been operating without much of a run game. But that was the theory to me. Those Tampa Bay teams didn't run the ball well. Jaquiz Rodgers and late career Doug Martin and Peyton Barber, just not a good run group. And then they figured it out a little bit. Obviously, when Brady came in and they focused on Tristan Wirfs and some other offensive linemen, they got better up there, and they had like a Leonard Fournette run, but they didn't do that with Jameis, and Jameis obviously like got a little better, obviously with Alvin Kamara there in New Orleans when he got a run. So it's like, okay, could he come to Cleveland and be more of a play action based field manager, guy who's like got a nice run game and is able to like build off of that, and the burden is less, the opportunity is less, and the desire or the need, Dave, to make those tight window throws, like I got to drive the bus here to get us down the field, it leaves, and he's really just taking what's in front of him, and they're able to use run efficiency, et cetera, to like amplify this. And then when Jameis needs a third down throw or two, he can make them because he's got that ability. But since he's taken over, it's been him. The run game has been non-existent. That's a huge conversation that has to be talked about throughout the rest of this year. Their just inability to move the football with any efficiency on the ground. And then you have a game where he's throwing 60 times, dropping back 65 times, and that's just not conducive for any quarterback in the league. If that was a way to win games consistently, the Herberts and the Mahomes and the Josh Allens would be doing that. So they can't live in that world, and Jameis is going to continue. Like, he's just making a few mistakes here and there. And like, I think to the root of your question, he's not he has an opportunity here to audition that he's gotten rid of the turnover bug, but he can still do the things that made Jameis the most appealing quarterback in the 2015 draft, and et cetera, et cetera. Like show us that you have rid those things from maybe your early career. And as we've seen, it's just not gone. It's still a part of who he is. But I do think we could all agree that the burden on him has been pretty high as well. So I do think that it's an interesting thing to think about of like, do they run another year of Jameis Winston as an opportunity to stay cheaper at the position, et cetera? Well, how about you try to put him in a less burdensome position to see if that stuff sort of takes care of itself that way? That's what I'm interested in, because like you said, he can still do some really fun things at the position, and he is obviously amplifying the production of everybody around him. The wide receivers are playing better. The offensive line is playing better. He is a guy they like to play with. He obviously, from a motivational aspect and all of that, is a really a big asset. And like I said, the offensive line, just they have a better feel for where he's at in the pocket and how he steps up and his depth on drops. He's easier to block for the wide receivers. Everybody who's out there knows, hey, I could get the football on this route. They're playing harder, better. There's no doubt Jameis is making the people around him on the offense better. It's just the part that he can't control is the run game, and that's not moving in efficiency that it needs to. And then obviously his mistakes have hurt them, in a pretty serious way. And I don't think every mistake is going to be a pick six, but you can certainly see where those mistakes they really can cripple you. And I think that's just a stigma that's followed him, especially when you hear him talk about, turning to Jesus to get rid of these pick sixes and stuff. He's mentally struggling with it himself. So it's real. He's so talented though. It's just a matter of like, what can you do to harness the good and like make it so he can try to find a way to mentally avoid the bad. That's really it if you want to stick with him.
Yeah, and the way I explain it with Winston is his arm is so good and he believes in it so much, it gets him into trouble. He just makes some throws that you shouldn't try to make on an NFL field. You tweeted this out, and I'm curious about it, relative to the Browns' offense. They've added RPO wrinkles, but otherwise same offense as previous years with Kevin Stefanski. Ken Dorsey hired because he saw the game similar to Stefanski, has more experience, RPO design usage. Isn't a completely new scheme in 2024. When you look at it, whatever they've done offensively just hasn't worked. I would argue that the offense kind of lost its identity to be physical with what they've tried to do.
Right. From a schematic standpoint, they're not much different than Kevin's ever been. Like they're trying to do more gun run, which has been more effective for them than the under center stuff. But it's no different. They ran a lot of gun pin pull stuff last year, living in a lot of 11 personnel, 3 wideouts and David Njoku. Like they've continued that this year. I'd actually say that they've gone into more multiple tight end sets than they have in recent seasons. So, if the scheme stuff's not different up front, I think obviously you can make an argument for, hey, should it be based on how they're producing with those guys? The pass game's not that much different. I mean, they're in a lot of flood concepts, which are 3 to a side, high, medium, low. They will do some bootleg stuff where they're trying to do, again, the same sort of flood variations and deception off of it. They love to run mesh. They still run that all the time. Kevin's done it his entire career here. And like they're a little more dressed up on some stuff, but they love to run, deep push through routes with a dig route underneath it, variations of that concept where they're side to siding it. Like they're not that much different. They're not. This isn't some. Like there's a misconception that this is a completely different way to approach the offensive football, and it's not. It's a lot of stuff Kevin has run here. When they've gone empty, they like to run spacing concepts to stretch the field horizontally on underneath coverage. So if you're playing cover 3 and you're playing 4 zone defenders underneath, we're going to try to put 5 underneath and identify the advantage. Those are all things that they've done, and I would argue that they've done even more backward process stuff with like away from this concept over the offseason, which is like this air raid. There was a lot of like buzzwords thrown around, and they're getting under center and throwing 5-step, 7-step under center throws to tight ends vertically and doing more of that stuff than they have. It's a funny thing that people think that the disappointing nature of Deshaun Watson starts are because the offense was so different. It really hasn't been that different than what Kevin's done here. They have done a little more RPO stuff because that's what Ken Dorsey's a little more comfortable in, and Nick Charlton, another guy that they brought into the offensive staff, more working with the O-line. But they've introduced some of that stuff, and they've been actually okay with it. But the struggles of the beginning of the season were not because this offense was something vastly, wildly different than what they've ever run. I just think that they were trying to find answers for a quarterback that is incapable of being consistent anymore. And I think that's where the frustration comes from, and that's where the lack of belief filtered into everybody else around him. And that's why they struggled. You're seeing the offense is not very different with at all with Jameis than it was with Deshaun. And you're obviously seeing that they can find a pretty healthy amount more success moving the football with that quarterback change, which is no different again than last season when you saw with Joe Flacco late in the year. So I don't have concerns about the Browns' ability to move the football. I have concerns about the run game stuff is a problem, and I think that when you lose Bill Callahan, I think Callahan gets a lot of credit for certain things. I don't think that he should get credit for. Like I thought the offensive line struggled last year too, but what you do miss is your offensive coordinator. He's usually a guy who does a lot of your run game planning. So, hey, here are the run concepts I think we should be running versus these 7 looks that are the predominant looks that the Broncos will give us. This is what we should be running in these scenarios. And that's a heavy play caller, offensive line coach conversation. They obviously do protections together too. Hey, if we're going 5-man protection, this is what it'll be. 6-man protection, here's what we can do. Those are the conversations. And I just don't think who they've brought in between Andy Dickerson and Roy Estevan and some of these others who are doing that, there is not a tangible difference. They've run more inside zone, which has been better because it's a good run concept staple, but their under center run stuff has really cratered in a pretty significant way this year. And I'm not sure that it's even a viable option for them moving forward, especially for the rest of the year, because they're really struggling schematically to come up with answers for the amount of players in the box teams are using, and the point of attack stuff is a problem too.
Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at Jerry Jeudy and some of the deep throws that he was open for. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Ted.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries home for the holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
We continue talking Browns with Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jerry Jeudy, a great game against his former team, the Denver Broncos. A lot of deep balls from Jameis Winston. Jake's going to do a film breakdown on some of the deep throws. Jake, take us through what you saw, and we'll just let it rip with Jerry Jeudy and the deep throws.
Yeah, so we're going to start like I think that's the first play of the game, just kind of over the middle concept where they're selling a toss left, and then they do a great job of working an underneath concept to throw Jerry Jeudy's drag there. This is kind of the stuff I want to hit on. This is a game plan specific thing. They wanted to take Jeudy from left from the side of Patrick Surtain to the opposite side there with 39 and pick apart the Broncos' use of match quarters to get an outside leverage leaning post to then come back down the middle of the field. And in another in breaker right here where he does a great job catching it. But that specific play from Jeudy was something the Browns came back to. They missed that throw. Jameis led them too far. But you'll see here in a moment they do come back to it. And here's a top of the screen look against Patrick Surtain, one of the better corners in the NFL right now, if not the best, and just an example of a little more physical at the catch point, at the break point. Really good, strong work there from Jeudy. That was a pretty consistent theme for him as he continues to grow here. Is just like understanding the physical aspect of it. This is a flood variation. I was talking about this in the last set. This is Kevin loves to do these 3 to a side overload coverage. He does a great job of throttling down in the window right there, not being too fast, giving himself and the quarterback a great opportunity to catch the football in that tight window again against Surtain, top of the screen. Blow, that we call that a brush by, where you're taking that inside arm and running him past, and inside pivot stop route, great example. But here's the side to side again, starting on Surtain's side, work to the left side against 39. This is their quarters look that they like to run. The Broncos do against this condensed set, and the Browns just said, hey, we're going to max protect it. We know the safety to the play side is going to eye David Njoku here, and at that point it's just a one-on-one with Jeudy. Can he get inside and win and run past him? Yeah, it's pretty simple, right? He can run past guys, and his vertical speed is obviously very much in check. And I just thought that was a great game plan use from the Browns, and especially not being afraid to come back to it after they missed it earlier in the game. The 2-point conversion, which I think followed that touchdown here, is just a nice little speed out where, you got to create an immediate upfield threat to stop the defender's feet, and then you win to the sideline. Great catch and extension over the edge there to get the 2 points. And then I believe this is sort of another middle in breaking against a 5-man pressure. So the Broncos only have 2 under, and it's just about Jeudy kind of climbing the middle of the field there. And again, good burst after catch. That's the stuff that you like to see. I think there were a lot of schemed up stuff here to Jeudy where it worked out in his favor, but obviously is still a pretty big threat after the catch to get upfield fast and create yards, especially if you leave him open like that. Just kind of running a now flat here against, again, a left side overload. And what I liked specifically about it was his lean forward at the catch there to get upfield initially instead of kind of sitting there and stopping. So a lot of good traits from Jerry in this one. This is the last drive curls, kind of meaningless catch, but I wanted to highlight every target he had. So, I think that as he gets more comfortable in this offense and they get more comfortable with how to use him, they use him in a variety of ways. They'll play him at Z, they'll play him at X, they'll let him be a big slot and get against some of those nickel corners who can't really keep up with him vertically. So I just continue to be impressed, and he's catching everything, doing all the little things right, and is a really good reason for optimism around Browns fans about what his ceiling can be based on, maybe some perceptions that he can only maybe be a secondary target as far as volume goes and be a part of an efficient offense. So he's kind of proving that he can lead an offense in this way and an efficient group, because what makes a guy air quotes here, like a wide receiver 1, is that they're targeted often and their offense is efficient when targeting him. And that's been the case. He was really tough, great gritty performance against the Steelers and carried that into this one too. And, among the top 5 receiving yards in the league right now. So there's really no point in putting a ceiling on what a guy who gets out of a bad situation in his previous stop there in Denver was. Ironically, they find a really good quarterback when he leaves, but I think he's just doing a good job of proving like, hey, this guy was selected top 10. He was selected in front of CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. There's clearly immense talent here, and that's where I'm most optimistic about continuing with Jameis, is like he's not afraid to use him and throw him and trust him, and that's why you feel good about the end of the year. Like, let's evaluate what Jerry is. And Cedric Tillman's had this nice run of play, like, oh, okay, maybe this wide receiver room has more talent than we were lying to ourselves about watching this offense struggle early in the year when the quarterback play was inconsistent. So that's a big reason for, sort of a cautious celebration here, is we're seeing that the weapons are maybe better than what we were led to believe based on, again, the performance of the guy trying to deliver the football.
Yeah, and I'm with you. The more I see of Jerry Jeudy, the more I want to see it. I do want to see him. Can he be a number one? I think that's still open for debate. Your
Yep.
air quote one. He runs good routes. He hasn't dropped many balls, and he's made some catches with his hands that indicate he's got pretty good hands.
Yeah. No, he's some of the stigma around him was that he didn't play hard enough in Denver, and he had a focus drop issue. And when you're out there running cardio because the quarterback play is so bad, it eventually does wear down your psyche. And I think that happened to him. And, the Sean Payton came into a new situation, a new place, and was trying to establish his dominance in that. And it's working out. The Broncos are doing fine, but it was not, that wasn't his guy. And that happens, and those trades happen, and the Browns capitalized on it. And even if Jerry is, maybe the Browns go invest in a top 10 wide receiver this year, and Jerry's more of the second most targeted guy. I don't like labeling them as like wide receiver 1 and 2. It's just like these are positions, and positions matter. And I just, the kind of labeling it by he could be the second highest targeted player in an efficient offense. That's well worth the contract that they gave him. So I don't. But again, I don't think there's reason to believe he cannot drive the sort of the front of the bus here on targets in an efficient offense, because we are seeing that produce itself like over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And then, like I said, is Cedric Tillman a young core piece that you feel really good about? I mean, there's no reason not to. He's been really strong. And, Elijah Moore's been better. I have a desire to improve on that position from an explosiveness standpoint, but even Elijah Moore has looked like a more efficient player in his time with Jameis too. And it's like, oh, this kind of changes the perspective on a lot of them. I mean, even Mike Woods had a pretty strong game as well. So again, I think we have this idea that, oh, they cannot draft wide receivers. They can't. Well, maybe it's just about finding a guy who can deliver them the football and instill in a belief in them that no matter what route I'm running on this play, I'm not out of the picture. I could get the football. And that, from my experience of playing with wide receivers who are talented guys, like they just want to be involved. Like that's the one position on the field that is skill-based, like you're running all the time, you're doing the dirty work. You want the football too. And if you don't believe you have a chance to get the football on, 55 of the 65 offensive snaps, that's a tough place to just go out and do the little things all the time. And you need the ball. These guys need the football. And when they've had that belief in the last 5 weeks, I think you could agree with me, your perception starts to change around how good these guys can be. And I think that's an exciting thing. And in the midst of a 3-9 season, it's an exciting thing to see some of these guys like, oh, you're kind of doing the old eyebrows or furling up a little bit. Maybe there's something there. And I think that's what we feel like Cedric Tillman, like the idea of 2 bigger guys that can run like Cedric and Jerry, and maybe drafting a Tet McMillan out of Arizona or a Luther Burden out of Missouri. There's a lot of interesting angles to take here that could like amplify this group. And then that becomes just an easier world for somebody like Jameis to operate in, right? Amplify the talent around him and see what happens.
Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the defense. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Check out this tweet, Chris Trapasso. Massive defensive regression from 2023 to 2024 for the Browns. A season ago, minus .157 EPA per play in non-garbage time, second best in the NFL. This year, .065 on the positive side per play in non-garbage time, 24th in the NFL. Jake, again, on brownsfilmbreakdown.com, I know you watch a lot of this. When you look at it, what have been the reasons for all of the, I mean, there's major breakdowns, and what's been the biggest disappointment defensively?
Let me put it this way. I think it's anytime it goes this direction so drastically, there's not just one reason. I think we could all agree on that. It's the second year of Jim Schwartz's tenure, so there's more film, there's more tendencies. That leads offenses to have better game plans. And we've pinpointed a lot of that on the website, where offenses are attacking them, how they're attacking them, and the need to certainly evolve. And I think they have tried to evolve in specific ways in coverage. And I would say their coverage plans, the evolution they have tried, has not been as good as you would hope. I think there's no doubt that Jim Schwartz is a better developer of defense around aggressive approach, closed coverage, a lot of man, and kind of sprinkling in cover 3. They really are one of the few teams in the NFL who don't run quarters, cover 4, and they like to use cover 2, and then they like to use different ways to use cover 2, such as inverted cover 2, that are just risky coverages. And we saw a couple examples of this over the course of the last 4 weeks, right? Like the Chargers on a 3rd and 17 early in the game caught the Browns in cover 2 on a 3rd and long, like I said, and kind of manipulated Denzel Ward, his eyes, and hit a corner touchdown that is like, how in the world does that happen? But cover 2 there is just not a very good call. It's just not to a 3-man side like that. And again, if you're curious why I'm saying that, like there's a huge breakdown we did on the website around that. And then like the inverted cover 2 stuff, which is instead of having your safeties be the deep half players, you're having your corners often tilt into the deep half and having players in the back half, like a safety, or if usually it's a one high safety, kind of play down in the middle hole. You're putting a corner in a stressful position to be able to run things down and help play that deep half. And that Bo Nix 93-yard touchdown is a Mike linebacker trying to run with a vertical route wide receiver. Good luck. And if Denzel doesn't get there to help over the top of that from his outside alignment, then it's a touchdown. And that's what we saw. Denzel was like literally a half second off of getting there. But that's it. And my theory here is that I don't think Jim Schwartz is an apt developer of modern coverage based on how the NFL is played. He does some really unique things in his pressure looks, and I think he gets his guys to play really hard. And for the most part, that yields some pretty good results. And especially against overwhelmed offenses or overwhelmed young quarterbacks, it usually, and last year had a lot of this, right? You got to think like weather games in that building, wind, the rain, the Jets, the Cardinals. I'm trying to think of just teams off the top of my head that played bad quarterbacks against them last year by virtue of their guy was hurt or whatever. The schedule sort of worked favorably on that stuff. And we tried to warn everybody about that this year, that a regression was coming because of that and because of the amplified amount of film. And could Schwartz develop a air quotes a consistent change up to what he traditionally likes to do to keep opposing coordinators and quarterbacks confused? And I just don't feel like that's been good enough. And to add to that, and Martin Emerson is like I kind of equate it to like a reliever who has lost confidence. He is still has all the things he needs, right? He's still got the fastball, he's still got the breaking ball, but he doesn't really feel comfortable with what he knows is the scouting report, right? Like, hey, you need to be here, there, the other. I think early in the year he lost confidence after Malik Neighbors kind of put him through the blender in that Giants game. And from there, it's like he's just a beat slow. He doesn't trust it. He doesn't want to get beat, so he's a little slow in jumping routes, and he's not the twitchiest guy. So that can lead him to some trouble in terms of like being a slight bit late. And I also think offenses have pinpointed how to attack him. And Greg Newsome, like I think Denzel Ward is having an all-pro season, but the people around in the secondary in terms of Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome have not had very good seasons. So then that puts a lot of drives continuing to happen because of third down failures. And then up front, it's been like teams know how quickly they have to get rid of the ball. And that leads to less time to pressure, because again, the way you confuse quarterbacks and get them to hold on to the football is you change the pre-snap to post-snap coverage. You confuse them with a look and make them hold on to it longer than they should, and they just haven't done enough of that. And that's kind of the crux of it. I just believe that Schwartz is not as from like a what is this guy good at as a play caller, etc. He's just not really good at that zone, like a cohesive zone coverage plan. And teams are getting better at identifying and kind of going at their man coverage, and that's why you see the results they have. And they've had very little turnover luck this year too. That has regressed in a pretty serious way. I know they just got a couple turnovers the other night, but for the most part, their turnover luck has been in a different direction. So last year, just really good at getting off the field with creating negatives early in drives and then getting off the field quickly. And this year, they have just not been able to close the door, create enough negative plays early to then have an easier third down, close the door, get off the field scenario. And I think that's where we're seeing some of those things come back to bite them. I'm less confident that Jim is the perfect long-term answer the way maybe a former head coach like Steve Spagnuolo has been for the Chiefs and some of these others, where it's like, I just don't know his ability to consistently adapt coverages and use personnel in a way that is confusing week to week for his guys, for the opposing quarterback and play caller. We just haven't seen enough of that. They're not bad. I mean, you can certainly do worse here, right? Like, it's not that they're bad. I just think that there's pretty clear ways offenses are going about attacking them, and they have done a nice job of figuring out down and distance based coverage tendencies, and that's where they're getting hurt in a pretty bad way this year.
Jake Burns, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Make sure you check him out, Jake. Always great stuff with the film breakdown and video analysis. Jake's from brownsfilmbreakdown.com, brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Make sure you check him out. Jake's always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. We continue talking Browns. Damon Wolfe, straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I was just sitting here thinking, I know a lot of people have been putting wide receiver as a priority for the offseason and the draft, but I kind of like our receiver room. Jerry Jeudy's emerging. Cedric Tillman has really come on as of late. Elijah Moore can play, and I think it's worth trying to maybe bring him back on a decent team-friendly deal. Jamari Thrash is someone who I've always been high on. I've always thought Mike Woods deserved an opportunity, and he's shown that he can play. And maybe when David Bell gets healthy, he might not be the fastest receiver, but David Bell's not going to drop any passes. I just think that it all comes back to quarterback play. I think our receiver room is good to where we should use off-season, like free agency and draft assets on maybe something different and push that down the priority list.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. Damon, yeah, I can't necessarily argue with that, but I come back to this. I like what Jerry Jeudy's done. Everybody that is an elite offense has a guy when the ball is in his hands, defense goes, that's a problem. I'm not sure the Browns have that weapon on offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, the game on Monday night, Jerry Jeudy had a certainly his best game of his career, and he flashed that he could possibly be that guy. I think he needs to prove it over a consistent period of time, and he's done that actually with since Jameis Winston has come in to play quarterback. So things are looking definitely promising. I'm happier with the wide receiver room overall. And as the caller pointed out, I think he made a really good point that it's really a collection of talent across the wide receiver room. And these guys have different skill sets that really kind of mesh together very well in building out the room in its entirety. But I agree. I wouldn't mind, while it could be less of a priority, I do feel that drafting one in the upcoming draft may be a possibility, as part of your long-term future, to go along with some of the other young guys that we have. But yeah, I mean, definitely since Winston has come in, things are looking up.
Yeah, and along those lines, take a look at this. So 5 games left. Jerry Jeudy is 92 yards away from a career high, which would be closing in on 1,000. Moore is 193 yards away from a career high. David Njoku, 2 touchdowns away from his career high. The first 7 weeks, the 3 only had a combined 548 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it makes, I guess what we're saying is the offense looks explosive, but it was so bad under Deshaun Watson, and I defended Deshaun Watson. I'm fully owning that. But the offense was so bad that now it looks like, yeah, we've got this guy and this guy and this guy because the bar was so low from the first part of the season.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how that works. Once the offensive line issues kind of have gotten corrected as well, as to go along with the better quarterback play. It's kind of like the chicken versus the egg conversation. And I'm with you. I mean, I have supported Deshaun Watson at times and wanted to give it some time and patience, but it has made it pretty clear that, like I said the other night, it's like watching 2 different teams in the same season. It's really kind of remarkable how the difference in the offense and how well they've been playing as of late.
So here's another thing. And I like what I've seen from Jerry Jeudy. I still keep going back and forth as the number 1. Well, let's compare him to CeeDee Lamb. This is 2024, so this year's comparison. Targets, Lamb has some significantly more. Yards are equal. Receptions, Lamb's 25 more. Touchdowns, Lamb 1 more. Yards per game, exactly the same because the yardage total is the same. So, and both have kind of struggled with quarterback play. So it's a fair comparison, and he's performing like CeeDee Lamb. So if we had CeeDee Lamb, would people be saying, do we need a number 1? Probably not. So when you look at it through that lens, Jerry Jeudy's performing like a number 1 receiver.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison there to see their stats side by side. During the offseason, a lot of the Browns fans, were clamoring when we were rumored in the Ayuk trade, and then that kind of fizzled out. There were conversations about could CeeDee Lamb be available via trade, and that's the guy everybody wanted, myself included. But to have Jerry Jeudy produce at the level that he has is similar to CeeDee. I don't think they're definitely not the same player, but to have them on the same level is really pretty cool to see this year. And for the value that we're getting, I don't know that Jerry Jeudy will ever be a true number 1 exactly, at the level that CeeDee Lamb has been in the past. But when you look at the contracts that both receivers signed during the offseason, it's really looking like, Andrew Berry found a steal.
Yeah, and take Jerry Jeudy's production the first 4 years with the quarterbacks he was playing with. And even, he looked okay with Deshaun Watson. You put him with a guy that throws the ball downfield to him, and it looks like he can play. And that's Jameis Winston. Along those lines, Jameis Winston is on pace for 3,360 yards, 20-plus touchdowns, and 14-plus interceptions in the 10 games if he stays healthy and continues on that current pace. Now, Mike, what I wonder with Jameis Winston, and I've said this before, Sean Payton in the 7 games he started when Drew Brees had left and then Winston got hurt, he didn't have the turnovers. Can Kevin Stefanski convince him that you don't have to go big every play? There are certain, can you draw it back in just a little? And I've said this, Jameis Winston's biggest problem is he realizes he has an arm that can make every throw. The degree of difficulty for some of the, throws that he's trying, it's just, you don't need a 9.8 degree of difficulty on every throw.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real question right there, Dave, is, can Stefanski make the situation work with Winston and kind of help to either, whether it be with the scheme or just, coaching and coaching him really hard. If he can get him to cut down the turnovers, that would be the ideal situation. I mean, Jameis Winston, he makes some incredible plays, made some incredible throws in the pocket Monday night, and then he just, missed some as well. In that first half, he missed Jerry Jeudy on a couple of throws, and then later in the game, of course, the interceptions kind of imploded the offensive explosion that we saw. And missing on that ball to Elijah Moore really, really hurt. And that was just a really poor throw. The read was right. Everything was right about it except the location of the ball. And it was an easy interception for the Broncos.
Yeah, so again, and I've said this, if you can find a way to get him to cut down on the turnovers, you don't have a competent, you have a middle-of-the-road starting quarterback. He has the arm talent and the ability to be, top 15, top 18, maybe even sneaking up a little higher. But you can't turn the ball over that many times. That's what makes you a backup quarterback. That's what goes, we can live with you for 17 weeks to, you might be able to win us 2 or 3 games if we have to play you 4 or 5. And that's what they have to figure out, can they get to with Jameis Winston. All right, so Browns through a walkthrough, and so injury report, kind of a guessing game, if you will. There was reports that Cedric Tillman might be able to go against the Steelers, still in the concussion protocol, progressing through it. You see everybody else would be listed as a DNP, so it'll be interesting to see. Browns also made a quick roster move as Jalen Darden, a wide receiver, was released, and they re-signed Bailey Zappi, something that was reported they were going to do anyway. Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature and I can step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Kevin Stefanski. Continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Head.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio lotteries home for the holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
We continue talking Browns with Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. Kevin Stefanski earlier today asked about how and why the pass protection has gotten better the last few weeks with Jameis Winston.
I really think, Jeff, it's a bunch of things. I don't think it's ever one thing. When you're talking about pass protection, it really encompasses so many things. What what are we asking the quarterback to do? Is it a 7-step, hold the ball, take 2 hitches, and throw it down the field? Is it quick game? Is it 5-step? How many guys are you keeping in protection? Are you helping via chips? How are the receivers getting open? So it's so involved. And then the quarterback's doing a good job making decisions and being where they're supposed to be in the pocket, I think is key. Obviously, we talked about the other night, you drop back that many times, you're going to put yourself at risk of taking sacks and being in those positions. But I think everybody kind of worked in concert, and that's really important.
And Damon, again, the offensive line play, I know Conklin got healthy, and they kind of haven't used Wills. But the offensive line play has been better since Jameis Winston has been quarterback.
Yeah, it really has. And, I think Kevin hit the nail on the head there when he said, knowing where your quarterback's going to be in the protection and the drop back is, huge for those guys. With Deshaun, it was, he was very frantic back there and kind of all over the place, trying to make plays happen and trying to leave the pocket too early and those types of things that led to a lot of the issues. That being said, the offensive line play at the beginning of the year wasn't as solid as it was now. We had Conklin wasn't even out there for a while, and then DeJuan Jones was struggling a little bit early. Maybe with some nagging injury and things like that. So I think the things have settled down. The injuries have settled down a bit, even though we don't have Wills back. I mean, Teller's been back. Pochich is healthy. Batonio's been able to stay healthy. So all of those guys playing together certainly has helped. And Jermaine Ifedi has come in and done a pretty nice job of just being really solid at the left tackle spot, which is really impressive for coming in the middle of the season.
All right, so you wrote an article for Dawgs by Nature. What's best for the Browns for the rest of the season? So first and foremost, you have Jameis Winston continues to play at a high level. Also, second on that list, DTR gets an opportunity and flashes talent. Third, Jack Conklin finishes the year strong and healthy. Those are 3 kind of on the offensive side of the ball. Let's kind of digest those. I know a lot of people want to see what you got in DTR. I don't know that we need to see that. He was drafted as a developmental guy. I don't think – I'll just say it. I don't see a starting NFL quarterback there. I see a guy that can be a competent backup who I think can play, but I don't see a starting quarterback there in what I've seen. And I know he's flashed in preseason, but as soon as things get – where they're disguising coverages and things are happening quick, he is slow to read and his accuracy isn't there. And I know I'm going to get a lot of people that like DTR just hating on me for that, but that's what I've seen from DTR.
No, that's okay, Dave. That's a pretty fair assessment from what we've actually seen in regular season play for sure. My only thing with Dorian, I'm not saying that he should come in and play right away. I think, Winston definitely deserves to get a couple more games and just to kind of see how it goes. And maybe we never see DTR at all this year. But I do think there might be a point where if, we lose a couple more games, Winston continues to have turnover troubles, that at that point it would be advantageous to turn to DTR for, 2 to 3 game stretch and see what he can do. I think the one thing that I will say in defense of Dorian is that he's never really had an opportunity to prepare, a whole, for a couple game stretch as a starter. The first game he ever played, he found out the day of the game that he was going to start, and that, turned out to be a disaster. He did look better in that Pittsburgh game last year. So, he has flashed. I just, I would like to see an opportunity to get a little bit of an evaluation on him. And it's probably true that he is maybe just a backup for the long term or the immediate future. But, knowing if he were to flash something, that they could maybe turn to him over the next couple years while they try to find new quarterback and he is on a rookie contract.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The other thing, Conklin has looked like Jack Conklin. He looks healthy, and that solves a problem. Now you might need a tackle if DeJuan Jones can play left tackle. You're looking for a swing tackle potentially. Jack Conklin has looked good. We haven't said anything about him, and that means the tackle is playing well.
Yeah, it sure does. And, you know, he's exceeded my expectations, especially here over the last several weeks. I think it did take him a couple weeks to, you know, get back into game shape and get some strength back all the way in that knee and stuff. But he has looked really good, and he's really solidified the entire offensive line just by handling his job and his spot out there. And I would argue that, you know, I know there's been a lot of talk about his contract, and maybe he's too expensive and they need to get younger and just move on. I would wholeheartedly disagree at this point and just say that, you know, he absolutely needs to come back. And maybe they work out a situation where they restructure his contract a little bit to lessen that cap number for next year. But to me, he's critical to come back. And, you know, DeJuan Jones, we can certainly pencil him in at left tackle. And I think we do just need to continue to build through the draft and find somebody that, you know, we can put on the bench next year to develop a year, you know, and see where things go with Jack Conklin from there.
All right, the last 2 points in the article that you wrote about what's best for the Browns. JOK returns to play this season, and I don't think anybody would argue that. And the Browns lose enough to earn the #1 overall pick in the draft. JOK, yeah, I'm concerned. I'm not going to lie. We haven't heard an update on him, and that's concerning without question. First pick in the draft, I'd rather have it when there's a can't-miss quarterback like Joe Burrow than the mess that there is this year at the quarterback position. But #1 overall pick is the #1 overall pick.
Yeah, it would bring some excitement. You know, we haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years after the Deshaun Watson trade. So, you know, that's kind of why I threw that in there. I agree there. I don't think that there's a worthy quarterback to take overall, #1 overall. And there's probably only 1 or 2 that are going to go in the top 10, period. So, you know, we'll see. But the JOK thing to me is really, really concerning. I don't know. You know, none of us know what his exact diagnosis is for the future. And there's been some things that were said that were a little concerning. So we shall see. But if he were to be able to get back on the field, at least, you know, okay, his career isn't in jeopardy. And if he doesn't get back this year, you know, that might be a talking point all off season. And I don't want to be talking about whether or not JOK is going to get back to football.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree wholeheartedly. Damon, Wolfe, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks, Damon.
No problem. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Damon Wolfe, make sure you check him out. Dawgs by Nature. Really good Browns coverage, some insightful stuff, especially with that article, What's Best for the Browns the rest of the season. We're step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Cavs, not much trouble at all with the Washington Wizards last night to win, improving to 19-3 on the year. National NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his concerns regarding the Cavaliers.
their defense has really slid over the last 3-4 weeks. One of the things that is an issue for them is size on the perimeter. This is where Atlanta really caused them problems. They were finding mismatches with the size advantages that they had on the perimeter. You know, if you look at what the Cavs are bringing off the bench on the perimeter, it's just not great size. The league also is now preparing for the Cavs zone. For a while, the Kenny was sort of going to this curveball of zone defense late in games, and a couple of times it really, really worked well. They were in trouble against the Hawks last week. They go to zone. Trae Young was waiting on it like a hitter sitting on changeup. There's no doubt that the Hawks had pre-prepared exactly what to do against the Cavs zone. So I do think that is developing as an issue that teams are going to poke at.
With that, let's welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, co-host of Full Court Cleveland. Sam, I know we're nitpicking, but it's a legitimate concern at this point.
Yeah, we saw that against Atlanta. We saw it in the loss against Boston. We saw these teams kind of running this, what they call a 5-out offense. Chicago did it with some success against the Cavs, even though the Cavs won those games. It is nitpicking a little bit, but the truth is, they've got to find a way to, and Kenny Atkinson has come out and said this, they've got to find a way to contain other teams' three-point shooters. When they got down big against Boston, even though they came back and won that game Sunday at home, they did a really nice job of kind of limiting or at least challenging a lot of those three-point shots from guys like Jason Tatum or Peyton Pritchard. And that's really been a point of emphasis since those Hawks games, where, as Brian Windhorst said, they just kind of got whatever looks they wanted from the perimeter and they were knocking them down. So, for a while there, it was working where other teams would just miss those shots in the second half. And eventually the numbers will add up where teams will start missing those three-pointers, even if they're open, because the legs are getting tired or whatever in the second half. But, Donovan Mitchell's come out and said, this zone is a work in progress. This is what we're doing. And, it's not important that we have it mastered now. We have to have it mastered in April. So, now you maybe take a couple of lumps, either not necessarily in losses, but, letting teams get on a big run throughout the course of the game. But I from everything I've seen, that's something that they're really working on cleaning up, and they did a nice job against the Celtics when it comes to defending the three-point line.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the things that's been really good about Kenny Atkinson, I know we're only, 22 games in now, he hasn't been afraid to change and tinker until he figures it out, and I imagine they'll figure something out. This from the Bleacher Report. It's kind of interesting. One word for every NBA team so far this season. For the Cavs, they say legitimate. You have to like that. You do not stumble into the league's best record in a top three-point differential by mistake. It may not even have reached its peak. Max Strus is yet to play, and the Cavs have the salary matching and asset ammo to chase Larry Nance Jr. and Dorian Finney-Smith type upgrades. If you could have one word to describe the Cavs, if you were a Cavs fan, I think legitimate's probably the best one.
Yeah, and nationally that might not be the case. A lot of people seem to be doubting them. They had a whole video about that, introducing Myles Garrett at the Wizards game. It was Myles Garrett bobblehead night, and Myles Garrett narrated this video saying, no one really believes in this team outside of Cleveland or Cavs fans, it seems like. But, the Cavs hear what everybody is saying. They're well aware that, it's Cleveland. They don't have a true Blues superstar like a LeBron James or Kevin Durant, so to speak. So there's always going to be those doubts. But I think that anybody who's watched them play for any extended period of time through these first 22 games can see, they're really onto something here. And, the defense, yes, that needs a little bit more work. But Kenny Atkinson has really reinvented this offense, and not only reinvented the offense, but really kind of instilled a belief in the players that if we do this, it's going to work, and we're just going to be able to keep this thing going. And just being in the locker room and around the players and around the coaches, you can see just kind of this belief that, when we lose, it's a stunner, because maybe last year at this time, it'd be like, the Cavs would take their lumps and lose a game and be like, well, we just didn't have it tonight. This year, I can tell you, there's none of that. There's no excuses, and when they lose, they look shocked and stunned. So I just think that those are all signs of a team that is quote unquote legit.
All right, next 5 games for the Cavs. Tomorrow night they will play the Denver Nuggets at home. Then they go play Charlotte, Miami, the Wizards, and at the Nets. So Nuggets, they're playing better. What do you want to see? What are you paying attention to for the Cavs in those next 5?
Some of those games, obviously the Nuggets, they're kind of been up and down. They don't have much of a bench, but we heard Brian Windhorst allude to the Cavs struggles against teams with big guards and size in the backcourt, and the Nuggets have that in Jamal Murray and Christian Brown. So, and obviously Nikola Jokic, who's going to try to defend him. They're going to go with Mobley or Allen because Jokic plays so much out on the perimeter. So that'll be a very interesting test, even though that game's in Cleveland. To me, the other thing to look out for, then you have the Wizards. You lucked into not making the NBA knockout round, the NBA Cup, and you get another home game against the Wizards. But those other games, the Hornets, the Heat, and the Nets, all on the road, those are all very capable, close to 500 teams. How do you perform against them on the road? You did not look good in your last road game against the Hawks. And they're also a 500 team record-wise. So it'd be interesting to see how the Cavs fare. This is not an easy stretch other than the Wizards game at home. These other road games and the Nuggets game, those are all, those games, you look at the schedule and you say those could go either way. So what kind of team are the Cavs? These are the games that tell us a little bit more.
All right, Brian Windhorst again, ESPN Cleveland, talking about some trade rumors involving a guy that, has bantied about the Cavs in the offseason.
The first trade rumor of the season came through. Apparently someone linking Kyle Kuzma potentially to the Cavs.
I had not heard that trade rumor. I don't know how the Cavs are getting to a Kyle Kuzma trade. I'd have to go look at that. But I don't think that really helps them, although that is size on the perimeter. But they need size who can defend, and that's not really what Kuzma is doing at this point in his career. The Cavs have very little draft assets to trade because they owe so much to the Jazz. They are a hair into the luxury tax. I would be very tempted if I were the Cavs to get out of the luxury tax with the trade. The Cavs have all this money coming on their books with Donovan Mitchell's extension and Evan Mobley's extension and even Jared Allen's extension. So they're going to be a luxury tax player starting next year. I would prefer them to try to get out of the tax if they could.
Sam, is there Kuzma probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Is there an area that, you look to upgrade that does make some sense? Is there anybody that could get bought out or that kind of thing?
Yeah, they would like to find, I'm sure, a backup big guy who could potentially fill in for Allen or Mobley, give them an extended rest. They're kind of relying on Dean Wade to do that now, and Kenny Atkinson calls him 6'9.5". So they really need some up front size, particularly off the bench. I think that would be their priority when it comes to what they may be looking for, either at the trade deadline in February or the buyout market that follows, or potentially a smaller deal, as Brian said, to get out of that tax. Larry Nance Jr., is a name that makes sense. I mean, you're looking for a guy who's a veteran, who understands his role. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Tristan Thompson, who they love, and they love having him around. He's great. He is, almost like a a coach and an extra coach. And when he goes in, he gives everything he has as usual. Be interesting to see. His contract becomes guaranteed on January 7th. So, if they're looking to get out of that luxury tax or add another big guy, I'm not saying Tristan will be a guy who will go, but it'll be interesting to see how they approach that. And I think they're in no hurry. And they're obviously, with the league's best record, they're far from feeling like we have to do something. It's just they know what areas they could use a little help in, and I'm sure they will seek that out between now and I believe February 6th is the NBA trade deadline.
Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right. Thanks so much for having me, Dave, and we'll chat at you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, make sure you check him out, hoopswire.com. He is also the co-host of Full Court Cleveland on the FanDuel Sports Network. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.